Healing Connection, a supporting light for better mental health. My name is Joey Bogner, and I have the pleasure today to interview Morris Beckford. Hello, Morris.
Hi, Joey.
Before we get into the interview, let me read you a little bit about Morris Beckford. Morris is an author, a professor, and a nonprofit sector leader who has worked in the sector for 20 years. Morris is currently the Vice President, EDI and Poverty Reduction for the Neighborhood Group Community Service and a professor at Humber College. He is also co-founder of Branded Youth Entrepreneurship Conference, which engages Black and newcomer entrepreneurs in Toronto. He has worked on numerous research and evaluation in Toronto area and is currently working on his PhD, where his research focuses on race and leadership and nonprofit organizations. Thank you very much for taking the time to interview me today. The first question I want to ask is, what inspired you to be a professor in the field of community development, specifically in the human rights, diversity, and inclusion?
Oh, great question. I think it's, most of my work in the nonprofit sector is, I would say, guided by my grandmother and my grandmother and my own upbringing. So I'm Jamaican by birth. I'm from a small little community in a place called Cashawalk, Bogwalk, Jamaica. And I would say that I learned from my grandmother in that tiny community how to treat other people. That's around the human rights pieces, how to behave in a way that just respects yourself, and use that to catapult into the work of respecting other people. As a saying goes, if you can't respect yourself, then how are you gonna be able to respect other people and their ways of being and knowing? So I credit her with a lot of my sort of drive to want to engage in this work of working with other people and trying to make sure that our systems function in a way that helps people and not really just destroy their lives. So yeah, all the credit goes to her and to my mother and my grandfather and my father and my siblings. So it's not so much the book stuff as it is the people stuff that drove me towards doing this work.
Yes, it's a very, very important tool to have a very good support system along the way, because they help to drive the purpose and the passion for what you want to do, right? And I can even relate that type of support to my own experiences, where I have cerebral palsy and a nonverbal learning disability, and I want to advocate for people with disabilities as a long-term goal. And I've had experiences a little bit struggling in the academic system when I was younger, but I was really, really passionate to have both the support from my parents at home and teachers and even professors at Humber to help me get to where I am. So yeah,
Right.
and one of the people that have actually inspired me and encouraged me to take the community development program was the program coordinator for general arts and science, Leah Zeidler. So we sat down and had some conversations, and she said to me, she goes, I think community development will be good for you because you want to go into disability advocacy, and they focus on a lot of community projects. So then she put me in touch with Linda Hill,
Yeah.
and then I started my first year of the program back in fall of 2019. And I've really, really enjoyed it. And, all the courses I've taken, I'm now entering my last year in September, and all the courses I've taken, social diversity and inclusion, and starting with yours and studying Indigenous and LGBTQ has really taught me a lot about the marginalized groups and how there could be different types of marginalized groups within the community. So I do really agree with your point that it really takes a big support system to reach a passion and a goal.
Absolutely.
All right. So next question are, what 3 life lessons do you want to share with us to build a resilient community together?
Oh, wow. Just three. Okay. I think one of the first ones is, steer clear of fear. I think that fear is one of terrifying motivators to do anything, but it's also a thing that really can cripple you and prevent you from engaging in work, in spaces and activities with people in a way that help you to grow. So that would be one of my first one, is steer clear of fear as much as you possibly can. I think the other one would be, try to self-reflect as much as you can in everything that you do. I think that sometimes we occupy the space where we think that everything is the other person's fault, and that we don't do anything that can really be damaging, or can be really just not good for us or for everybody else. And for me, that doing a lot of self-reflection helps me to be grounded enough to bring me back to, it's not everybody else's fault. Sometimes it's mine. Sometimes it's not mine. But just being self-reflective is I think an important one. If I were to narrow it down to the third one, I would say it's pay attention to history and to the role that history has played in where we are as a society and where you are as a person. I think that sometimes we forget that where we are now is directly linked to the resources that were attached to certain groups, the resources that were not attached to certain groups.
Right.
And if we position certain bodies as not able or not having the ability to do certain things, that has direct links in history, and how, for example, eugenics movements sort of made certain bodies as inferior and not normal. So just pay attention to history is, I think, is the other one that I would say. But there's just so many pieces, but I guess I would sort of boil it down and narrow it down to those three.
Those are excellent life lessons, because even when I think of the work I do in my program, we took an Indigenous course, Indigenous Ways of Knowing, in the winter of last year, or last semester 5, and there were a lot of reflective reflections that we had to do about Indigenous communities. And it really, I really like the idea of reflecting, because number one, you can go for as long as you want when you paragraphs and paragraphs, and produce a good quality when you reflect, as opposed, and then kind of relate your own experiences. And the second one that really caught my eye was also pay attention to history. I actually read a book about disability policies. It talked about different policies within the US, though, but it really goes to show that the history doesn't have to happen in just Canada. It could happen in the US too, and it could just go and show how important it is to promote accessibility. So Bob Dole, he had a disability, and all these ministers trying to promote accessibility, those are so important, whether you live in Canada, US, or anywhere. So thank you for bringing up those lessons.
Absolutely.
And the last question is, it might be a little repetitive, but what are your top 3 words of wisdom you have for people who are interested in learning about community development for their better mental health? So Healing Connection focuses on building a resilient community together. And the purpose of our interviews is to hear people and their words of wisdom and what they have to share with the rest of the audience. So what are your top 3 words of wisdom you have for people who are interested in learning about community development for their better mental health?
Yeah, I'd say put people first when you're doing community development. I think a lot of the times when I've certainly been guilty of this in my early days of community development, is we go into neighborhoods or communities or organizations, and we do what we think the community wants or needs. And we put ourselves first and our ideas first and our approaches first, instead of spending our time to listen to a community and work with community and get what they want from us, instead of the other way around. So I think the first thing is to make sure that we're putting community first, repositioning and putting the people in those communities first. I'd say the second one is making sure that you are spending the time to take care of yourself. So self-care in this work, I think I think certainly know at this point, Joey, or if you don't, you will know that if you don't take care of yourself, you can experience some really depressing things.
Yes.
I think every day that I've done community work, so I'll deeply personalize it. I've done community work. It's in spaces that are either suffering from gun violence, extreme poverty, a combination of both those things. I've been in spaces where I'm walking past bodies laying on the ground. I've worked with staff who've seen people jump from buildings. Those things really start having a negative effect on your own mental well-being if you're not careful to spend the time necessary to take care of yourself. I think you may remember this. I think I've done it in a class where you were at, Joey, where one of the things that I help our student to understand is that if you cut your finger,
Right.
or if you cut a limb, you spend the time necessary to clean that finger, you clean that wound, and you spend so much time making sure that you get a Band-Aid, you get the alcohol swabs, you clean it up, you take care of it, you make sure that you change the Band-Aid on a regular basis to make sure it doesn't get infected. Well, it's the same thing that we have to do with our brain, right? It's basically getting cut every time you experience one of these challenges in doing community work. And so if you don't spend the time cleaning up and making sure that you get the support you need for the challenges that come with those experiences, then you're not going to be in a good place. So I'd say make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Self-care is an important piece. The third one I would say is, pay attention to the stories, I guess, in community, because there's just so much rich data and so much power in listening to people's stories and helping them help you to understand the issues in those communities can come out of those stories. I grew up in largely poor neighborhoods in Canada. And so my story is tied to some of those experiences of poverty. And so when I do community development work, I try not to be a gatekeeper, for example, and that flows out of my story. And so I'd say that pay attention to stories, pay attention to the experiences of folks in community, because they can teach you quite a bit about who people are, quite a bit about how to do the work, and quite a bit about how not to do the work in community development. Yeah, I think those are the 3 that I'd say I have off the top of my head. I also wanted to say, there's always a personal cost to some of the things that you experience in community. So whether it's racism, homophobia, sexism, ableism, ageism, all of them, there's a personal cost to you and a personal cost to the people experiencing them. Though again, the stories that come out of those are powerful and can be used to really get you where you need to get to and get communities where you need to get to if we pay close attention to those stories.
Those are so important lessons. I really like the part about paying attention. And, there's actually a fact that on our website on Healing Connection that says suicide is the second leading cause of death among teens and adults. So I really appreciate, and I really think that serves as an eye opener, as a good and powerful lesson, because people need to know the leading cause of suicide, right? And it's so important. And we get so unaware of like why, especially if people are in a depressed state, we kind of get unaware of why we're doing certain behaviors. So like we said, like why do people have the urge to jump off a building? Like for instance, you do it because they want to escape, right? And self-care is also so important as well with the brain and everything, right? Because it's so important, like from my perspective at least, to go into an open mind when learning about a new field like the LGBTQ and Indigenous, because even though I don't identify as members of that community, I'm still very interested in having an open mind. Makes me interested in saying, how do these people live and what were their challenges? And how can I support people who are not, how can I support people who are marginalized groups that are different from my own? So I really think that it's very important. So thank you for bringing up those 3 life lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what is the saying that, a threat, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice anywhere. We're all in the same boat together. So I can't be okay with your injustice and not be okay with mine. Because just being okay with your injustice is basically saying that I'm okay with my injustice as well. So it's all wrapped up together. And in spaces where you feel threatened, it's going to be a threat to me eventually at some point, right? So ableism is going to be, it's a threat. And so if I don't link that to racism, then I'm not doing myself and the work any justice.
And going back to what we also said about the brain and having an open mind, I think most people who are unfamiliar with the work, like we said, kind of generate their own, think of their own community, right? So and I faced this growing up too, when I was younger, I didn't really pay attention to many communities except my disability community, because that's what I identified with. But now that I'm older, I start to gain and grasp, how can I help others and support them and make a difference in the world,
Absolutely.
So those are such good lessons, and experience is also important.
Yeah, and 100%.
So that actually wraps up the interview for today. So thank you very much for meeting with me, and feel free to visit our website at www.healingconnectionhc.org. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Joey.
And if you haven't followed us or subscribed, you can do so by clicking on our website. So thank you very much and take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.